Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd. I'm a huge fan of cars used in old television series, and I'm also an independent vehicle consultant. I find cars for people. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at a number of old television series from the late 50s right way through to the late 1990s, and I'm going to be telling you about some of the cars used in them. So join me on this journey as we look at some stills, maybe play a brief bit of video footage, and I tell you all about the cars used in old British TV series. Yes, viewers, we're going for the big one today. We're looking at yet another series produced by ITC, and the script editor or script supervisor was Dennis Spooner, like in Randall Hawkeye Deceased and Department S. The producer was Monty Berman. It was made at Elstree Studios in Borehamwood in Hertfordshire, and used a lot of the same directors as the Barrett and Department S and Randall Hawkeye Deceased. It's the champions of law, order, and justice. As you saw there, I am quite a fan of the champions. I have the original soundtrack on the 3-disc set. But sometimes play in the car if I'm feeling bored, really bored. And it is one of the favourite TV series that I have. I have a huge nostalgic attachment to the champions. It was one of the series that I saw in about 1995 on BBC Two, along with The Saint and Randall Hawkeye Deceased and The New Avengers. And for some reason, the champions has a lot more of attachment for me than a lot of the other series do. I don't really know why. Randall Hawkeye Deceased and The Avengers and The New Avengers are very similar in that way. So it was produced between February 1967 and February 1968. There are 30 episodes in total. A lot of the filming was done in the sort of Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire area, known as Avengerland, as we've discussed before on this series. There was some location filming abroad, actually, for this series, which is very unusual. The Saint had a little bit, and so did this for the episode Desert Journey. We'll get into some of the cars that were used in Desert Journey a bit later. But most of the filming was as far away as Boxer and Surrey was about as far as it went. A little bit of filming, I think, in Buckinghamshire by a windmill when it was supposed to be in Amsterdam. Of course, it wasn't. But most of it, they used back projection, they used stand-ins, they used sets, they used stock footage, they used whatever they could to just keep the cost down as much as possible whilst keeping it looking fairly decent for the time. So the champions starred Stuart Damon as Craig Stirling, Alexandra Bastedo as Sharon MacReady, and William Gaunt as Richard Barrett. Their boss is Commander Tremayne, played by Anthony Nicholls, although he has the weirdest wig and beard. If you've seen him in the episode of Department S called Ghost of Mary Burnham, or the Avengers episode Whoever Shot Poor George Oblique Straight XR40, yes, that really is the title of the episode, then you'll see Anthony Nicholls in 1968 without the wig and the beard, and he looks so different when he puts that on. The premise of the champions is that 3 agents of an international organisation called Nemesis, they're basically secret agents, but they don't work for any individual government. They are based in Geneva. That's why you see the fountain in Geneva, although the building that you actually see used as Nemesis headquarters is in Totteridge. It's a government building, and I've actually been there myself. It doesn't have the Geneva fountain behind it, I'm afraid. That Geneva fountain was superimposed on a trip that Monty Berman himself took to Geneva. That's how cheap he was. He didn't send a film crew or anything. He just used his own camera. That's just the way that things were. So they are an international organisation based in Geneva. They're sort of secret agents, kind of, but they're not working for any one individual government. And the three of them go on a mission to China to steal a type of bacteria back from the Chinese, get hold of it. They're successful in what they do. They manage to get hold of this particular bacteria. It's in some sort of bug. And they get on a plane, and everything's going fine until the plane crashes in the mountains of Tibet. Now, on a set in Borehamwood, or I should say in the mountains of Tibet, they encounter an unknown civilization who mend their bodies and endow them with superpowers. These powers are never fully defined, but they include things like being able to see in the dark, stay underwater for a very long time, telepathy, etc., etc., that kind of stuff. Really, it's the series that's called Heroes, that was by Tim Kring in the sort of mid-2000s in America, but way before that. This is 1967. It was originally filmed and then bid in 1968. It's a very interesting premise, but does it really live up to all this kind of build-up and, you know, what essentially are secret agents becoming superheroes, but nobody really knows their powers? They choose to keep the powers to themselves. We're going to talk about the cars of the champions first. There's actually a lot to talk about in this respect, and then we'll get on to whether or not this is worth watching in 2020 a little bit later. One of the first things to point out when we're looking at cars used in the champions is that there aren't regular cars in the normal sense that there were in, say, the Baron or Department S, or Randall Hawkett Deceased. We haven't got, you know, cars supplied by Vauxhall for the duration of a series. We don't have somebody who has a fancy Bentley for the whole time, or a Jensen. We don't have that. So we're going to have to divide this up into sort of different sections. Once again, I really am not able to talk to you about absolutely every vehicle that appears in Champions. There are 30 episodes, I'd be here forever. But we can talk about some of the main ones. And we'll start off with the cars that you see most often used by the main cast. As you would have seen two MGBs, a 64 and a 62 MGB. They are, I think, probably supposed to be the same car, but they're used in different episodes. Sharon MacReady is really not seen in a regular car apart from an MGB, which she drives two different MGBs in 2 episodes, so that's probably the main car that she has. Other than that, it's just one-offs, which are not that interesting, really. But one of the Night People, which is the one that's used more often than the one in Full Circle, is BWH921B, a 64 MGB. And then in Full Circle, it's a 62 model with the leather straps on the bonnet, 1644 PJ. What is a regular car in the series, and surprisingly, actually, it's Monty Berman's own car. Again, we've already seen this in Department S. We've already seen this in the Baron. It's a 1963 Alfa Romeo Giulia SS, and I think this is a real plate that it had, 3366F. That's used in the Champions episodes of The Invisible Man, The Night People, Auto Kill, Nutcracker the Final Countdown. I'd say it's as close as you can get to a sort of regular car from the Champions. And that's driven by William Gaunt, Richard Barrett. Then we have another sort of cheat in that the green Mercedes that you would have seen in the Baron, it's a 1960 Mercedes 220S. Stuart Damon, Craig Stirling, he drives that on several occasions in the Champions. And it's a very well-known background vehicle from the Saints series, actually. The ones I could find it in are the Final Countdown again, Gilded Cage, and Auto Kill. But then we get into other territory. Now, there's so many other cars that they drive themselves on just one occasion that we're going to have to talk about that a bit later. But there's some that are driven by them on sort of more than one occasion, and so we will get into these now. There's a Vauxhall Cresta, LXD 948E 67. That's used in the Fanatics and Project Zero. There's a 66 Ford Zephyr 6 that's used in Nutcracker, the Gilded Cage, Full Circle, and Body Snatchers. With those last two, they are both driven by Stuart Damon or William Gaunt on more than one occasion, which is why they're in the main car list. And now we'll go into look at some other cars. Next up is a car that's very similar to the Vauxhall Cresta we just talked about, but it's actually more of a background car. It's driven by, I think it's Stuart Damon in the episode of The Experiment. It's JXE 316D. It also appears driven, I think, by Peter Wingard, because he was in the Champions in the episode Invisible Man, but it only appears very briefly. For the episode Desert Journey, as I've mentioned, they did do some foreign location filming. It wasn't an awful lot, but the main cast didn't go abroad, but they did film some bits, and the way they got round this with the main cast in the studio was really stupid. They had a 1955 Jeep CJ6 that you would have seen. That car also appears in Department S in stock footage. But in the studio, they sort of mock up a 1956 Land Rover Series 188 inch to look like the Jeep, which is stupid, but there we go. Another car that you see quite a lot in the series, although in only one episode is it driven by William Gaunt, Richard Barrett, is a 1965 Ford Cortina GT LJH 830C. That's in the Ghost Plane, Full Circle, and Nutcracker. Only in Full Circle it's driven by William Gaunt. There's also in The Invisible Man a Vauxhall VX 490, which is a very fancy Vauxhall Victor FC. That is KXE 679D. Let me just get my notes right here. It's a 66 model. It's got the sort of flash by the side of it. And then there is another very similar Vauxhall, which is again the sort of FC series, but this time it's a much more basic car. It's a Victor 101 Estate from 67, DXB 376E, and that's in the Body Snatchers. Because this is an ITC series made by Monty Berman after the Baron, we next have some very familiar vehicles appearing. We have 1962 Renault Dauphine in A Case of Lemmings, which of course falls to its doom. What a surprise. A 1957 Jaguar Mark 1 in The Final Countdown, which falls to its doom. What a surprise. Also in A Case of Lemmings, there is a 1959 Fiat 1800 that's used supposedly, I think it's in Italy, but to be honest, that's just the backlot set that used to exist at Elstree Studios in Borehamwood. There is also another Jaguar Mark II. In fact, there are several of them Jaguar Mark IIs in this series. The one that stands out to me most is a brown one that's used in To Trap a Rat by William Gaunt, Richard Barrett. In the episode The Mission, there is a car chase between a 1965 Bedford CAL and another Jaguar Mark II, but the Jaguar Mark II, the picture's so terrible I won't even show you that. And then in The Invisible Man, there's a very interesting car. It's a 1964 Mercedes-Benz 190D. I think the model code that's a W110. That is a diesel model when they weren't really sold at all in this country is particularly fascinating. So we're on the home stretch now. Last section of cars that we used in the Champions that I think are of interest. First one is a very, very rare car. It's a 1965 Volga M22 Estate, and that's a genuine UK car. They were built in Belgium for several markets, and this was one of them. It's a right-hand drive car. That car also appears in Thunderball, if you can believe that. I don't know particularly why. It was a great car to have in Thunderball. It just sits at the back outside the clinic in Shrublands in Thunderball. But anyway, if we ever talk about cars of the Bond series on this channel, then that'll be one of them. In the final countdown, there's 1964 Ford Towner 17M. Again, very rare in Britain at the time. In the episode The Search, a former Nazi officer, played by John Woodvine, drives a 1964 VW Carman Gear, the square Carman Gear. I can't remember what type number that is. It's AFN 903B. You can also see that car in other episodes of other things, I think. What was really strange about the Champions is they seem to have some kind of deal with Mercedes-Benz at some stages. There were three identical Mercedes 250Ss in various episodes. One's the Body Snatchers, the other one is the Fanatics, and the other one is the Ghost Plane. And they're all almost consecutively numbered in terms of the plates. They're all 1967 Mercedes 250Ss. One of the Body Snatchers is the most interesting to me because it's driven by Bernard Lee in a car chase with the Vauxhall Victor 101 Estate. The Vauxhall Victor 101 Estate does not handle well. You can see it in that it really doesn't. And the number plates of them all are between RGP 120E or RGP 125E. Just in car to, be supplied by the factory, but there we go. Final one I'll talk about is an episode called The Gun Runners, and it's a 1958 Peugeot 403. It's actually used twice. Once it's supposed to be a police car or sort of airport security car in Brussels, although that scene was filmed at Elstree Aerodrome. What a surprise. And then it appears outside some warehouses in Rangoon, although it's not really Rangoon. It's Elstree Studios in Borehamwood. You see how they film this series. It's charming. So there we go. That was the cars of the Champions. Is it worth watching the Champions these days? Well, personally, I think so. I love the music of the Champions. I love the kind of low budget feel of a lot of it. You'll see the title sequence that you would have seen towards the beginning of this video, that William Gaunt can't keep his arms still when he turns to the camera, which is hilarious. I don't know why they went with that shot. They just did. Yes, so Edwin Astley again, same chap as the Saint, Baron, Department S, Randall Hawkirk. He wrote the music for it, and of course, it's brilliant. The plot lines are a little bit sort of far-fetched at sometimes. I wouldn't say the central cast is as strong as something like the cast in Randall Hawkirk Deceased, but I think it still works well. It's worth having a look at. I just happen to like it. So thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll be looking at another old television series made in Britain later this week. And don't forget to visit my Facebook page, facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching.